very warm welcome to the second day of this early childhood conference. The theme for today, as mentioned, is Nurturing Care Framework, Plans, Advocacy and Implementation in Pakistan, and how it compares with the regions in South Asia. We are slightly delayed, so I will not take a lot of time. I'll just invite the first speaker, who is probably on Zoom right now with us. That is Ms. Meeta Gupta. She is an early childhood development specialist at the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia. She's worked in the field of education, including early childhood education, disability inclusive education, gender and education, and reaching out of school children, early childhood development, and gender and development for more than 20 years. So she will be talking on the importance of nurturing care framework and what is happening in the relation to this in South Asia. Ms. Meeta Gupta, please.
Oh, thank you. All right. So our work in promoting early childhood development in the region is very much grounded in the nurturing care framework, which recognizes that parents and caregivers are central to providing nurturing care. But in order for them to play this crucial role, this requires support at all levels. And we all have a role to play within this across ministries and stakeholders. Now, with this brief backdrop, let's take a look at where we are with regard to promoting early childhood development here in the South Asia region. Just for a bit of context, approximately a quarter of all children under the age of 5 globally live here in the South Asia region. So quite a large proportion of the world's young children are in this region. And our data indicate that approximately half, or close to half, of children, of these children in countries in the region are at risk of poor development as a result of stunting or extreme poverty, which are two determinants of children's development. And while we don't have a lot of data on violence against young children, the little data that we do have points to alarmingly high proportions of children experiencing violent discipline. And what we know from evidence is, of course, that prolonged exposure to violence, abuse, and neglect, particularly in the early years, can have a profound and lasting impact on children's lives and overall development. And the COVID-19 pandemic related school closures, of course, have impacted on children's education across the region and, of course, across the world. And this includes young children, millions of whom have missed out on their pre-primary education, this critical stage of their education. So, when we're looking at learning recovery efforts, it's critical that we ensure that young children are included within the effort. Now, thinking about early childhood education, if we look at access to early childhood education here in the region, we see it's quite a varying picture. There are some countries where access continues to be a critical issue. For example, countries like Bangladesh and Bhutan, where less than half of children are accessing early childhood education programs. And then other countries on the other side of the spectrum where access is relatively high. Countries like Nepal and Pakistan. Of course, we don't have a lot of data and information on quality, but if we delve a bit deeper into kind of some of these access figures, we see there are inequities in terms of access to early childhood education. Now, normally we don't see a lot of gender, we don't see gender disparities and in terms of access to education at the early stage. We usually see this becoming more apparent in later levels of education, primary and particularly at the secondary level. But here in the region and in a number of countries, we do see gender disparities already at the early childhood education stage. And where you see those figures with green, there are countries where there are lower proportions of boys that are enrolled in early childhood education. For example, in the Maldives and Sri Lanka. And then other countries where there's significantly lower proportions of girls enrolled in early childhood education programs. So, for example, in Nepal and Pakistan. And we also see lower proportions of children with disabilities who are participating in early childhood education programs. So some disparities, to address already in the early childhood education stage. In terms of the enabling environment, in most countries in the region, this is kind of relatively strong. Countries either have specific ECD policies in place, or plans, or ECD strategies. Also, all countries in the region have legislation in place providing for paid maternity leave for mothers of newborns. Although very few countries in the region, only 3, have provisions for paternity leave. That's Bhutan, Maldives, and Nepal. So you can see from this that there are areas in which definite progress has been made, as well as a number of issues and challenges that also remain as we move this agenda forward. Now the good news is that across countries in the region there are important initiatives that are being undertaken to promote early childhood development. And I'd like to share a few examples of those. And these are loosely kind of framed around the 5 strategic action areas for operationalizing the Nutrient Care Framework that you see at the top of the screen there. So starting with the first, looking at youth and invest, as I noted, most of the countries have some sort of either policy or plan in place for early childhood development. And in 2 countries, they've kind of gone to the step of also costing their multi-sectoral ECD action plans, that's Bangladesh and Bhutan. And in Bangladesh, this is involving 19 ministries and divisions, so quite a large exercise that's underway in the country there. And speaking of Bangladesh, there's a good example there of where the business community has played a key role in promoting early childhood development, and particularly in terms of promoting family-friendly policies. And there, UNICEF works with other partners in establishing the Mothers at Work program. This is in the ready-made garment industry there, where over half of the workforce are women of reproductive age. UNICEF has worked with the ready-made garment industry to support maternity protection and breastfeeding promotion. And this has led to an increase in knowledge about breastfeeding and optimal infant feeding practices among the workforce there, and also has led to a greater retention of female workers. And so it's been a win-win in terms of the employers as well as the employees and their families and children. Okay, going on to looking at families and their communities, countries across the region are, implementing different parenting programs, which is a very positive, kind of development that we see across the region. I've noted just 3 there on the screen where there's some parenting packages that have been developed relatively recently. Of course, this includes the key family care practices package that has been developed in Pakistan. And these are all at different stages of being rolled out. One of the issues that we do see across the region is while parenting programs are being implemented, they're being implemented in different parts of the country, and there's still some way in terms of taking these programs to scale and reaching all children and their parents and caregivers. Now, in terms of monitoring progress, the ECDI 2013 some of you may be familiar with is a measurement tool that was developed in conjunction with ECD indicator 4.2.1 that looks at the percentage of children between the ages of 24 to 59 months that are developmentally on track. So a key indicator we're looking at early childhood development. Two countries in the region have carried out this survey. In Sri Lanka, this was led by the Family Health Bureau there, and they have established a baseline for this key indicator. And in Nepal, this was conducted at the time of the COVID-19 related lockdowns and school closures. And so they've developed a modality for carrying out the survey over the phone. And this has led to some interesting findings that looked at, that found that as children got older within that age range, they were less likely to be developmentally on track. And also found that caregivers' education levels were significantly associated with the likelihood of children being developmentally on track. And they also found that amongst the different remote learning modalities that were being used at that time when the schools were closed with young children, that those that were interactive and that involved some engagement with the teachers were more positively associated with children being developmentally on track. So some interesting findings there. And there are also standards that have been developed, including in Pakistan and ECD standard index, and also at the regional level, there are quality, service quality standards that have been developed that can be contextualized to country context, looking at the different services that are provided for young children and their quality. Okay, and lastly, just to look at innovations in the context of COVID-19, if we can look at something that's good that has come out of that experience. It was really, you could see the increased engagement with parents and caregivers in the region, and there's many different innovative modalities in reaching out to them, including low-tech modalities such as sending voice messages, text messages combined with phone calls, using WhatsApp and so forth, to reach out to parents and caregivers. That would be important to continue. And in Bhutan, one of these initiatives has sort of kind of carried on beyond that context, which is this home-based learning program, whereby they're reaching out to parents and caregivers in contexts where children are unable to access ECD centers, and provide this as an alternative modality for them to continue to engage in early childhood education. And lastly, to share one last example, which is an initiative called Project Play, which is being implemented in Pakistan and the Sindh province, which is spearheaded by UNICEF, which makes use of the packaging for ready-to-use therapeutic foods, or RUTF, and repurposes them and transforms them into toys to promote play in contexts where, in conjunction with services reaching out to malnourished children. So, one example of innovation, and something that may also be tried out in Afghanistan as well here in the region. So just to share, a few examples, and I'm happy to answer questions and later on in the session. So thank you so much.